And let's get straight into the politics, shall we? And speak to Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Matt Vickers. Very good morning to you, Mr Vickers.
Good morning, Ellie.
Morning. Can we start by talking about Andy Burnham? He's been blocked from standing in that by-election in Manchester. Was that the right decision?
I think it shows a lack of... Keir Starmer is terrified, isn't he? This is a man scared of his own shadow at the moment. He's got leadership ambitions coming from West Street, in from Ed Miliband, from every other corner. He's seen this as an opportunity to cut it off at the knees. The government's in a mess. He lacks the leadership to take this country forwards. This is a party without a plan and without a direction. Sad situation, really.
Well, he's saying he's getting away from the psychodrama that symbolised the Tories' time in power. The reality is that I think the chances of winning that by-election have probably gone down as a result of him axing Andy Burnham. But this is a party that's full of infighting. It doesn't have a plan. It doesn't have a direction. It isn't delivering for this country. And by gum, are they making a mess of our economy.
We've got to sort out, Matt, is social media and it's stopping harming children. You believe it's a bad situation, and ahead of this vote in the Commons, what do you want to see being done?
I think we need to see a ban for under-16s. I mean, social media can be a force for good, but actually, for youngsters, it's a huge distraction. We've seen the consequences when people are exposed to some terrible things. We've heard about the stories of youngsters learning about suicide methods. We've seen, do you know, when we were at school, bullying stopped at the school gate, you went home. Now these kids take these bullies home with them into their own bedroom via the power of these phones. We've got to find a way to get rid of that distraction, allow youngsters to grow up properly, to experience the real world rather than just that online world and all of the horrific things that it can bring with them. I think it's right that we put forward.
But in a way, Matt,
I think it's right that we
that is the real world, Matt. In a way, that is the world that exists today, not when you were at school or when I was at school.
I think online, you know, the digital world is a place, but social media is full of disasters for young people. It can cause all sorts of untold consequences. We've heard the stories from parents about the harm that it's done to these youngsters, the challenges to their mental health. And the reality is, some people are saying it should be a choice for parents. I can understand that as a perspective, but actually it's for the most vulnerable youngsters who don't necessarily have parents who can manage those children and their online habits and protect them from some of the worst things that come from social media, that misinformation, that bullying, that abuse. I mean, we saw Grok creating new defying images of children and women. We've got to protect youngsters from that and let them grow up in a sensible way and bring it to them when they're old enough to deal with some of the horrific things that go on online.
Okay. Can we talk about this major policing overhaul, this massive reform being set out by the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood? This is going to overhaul policing in England and Wales. Loads in here, talking about cutting red tape, unnecessary admin, more bobbies on the beat, all of those sorts of things. Also using modern techniques to fight counter-terror and fraud. It's being described as Britain's FBI. Looks as though Labour wants to be the new party of law and order. What do you make of it?
I don't think anybody will buy into that. The reality is there are potentially ways that you can improve the structure around policing, but we've got to take it with, I mean, lots of headlines, but very little detail as yet. We haven't seen the detail. There's concern about what another top-down restructure will mean for frontline policing and community policing. And the reality is that, according to them, this project is going to take 10 years. I don't know about you, but I'm not particularly confident that Labour are going to be in power in 10 years. Some would argue, I might argue even, that this is a distraction from Labour's record on crime and policing. You've got to remember, they've been in office 18 months. There are 1,300 less police officers on the street. Police forces across the country are facing a £500 million shortfall this year. They're letting dangerous criminals back out onto the streets early, and the end result of that is that everyday crimes like shoplifting are surging. They're at record levels, up 13% since Labour came to office is shoplifting. It's all going the wrong way on policing with this government. We'll wait and see the detail and see what they've got to offer.
And finally, Mr Vickers, can I ask you about Priti Patel, Dame Priti Patel? She has criticised Reform UK on Camilla Tominey's show on GB News. She was talking about their policy on welfare and the economy, comparing them to the National Socialists, a.k.a. the Nazis. Not the first Conservative MP to do this. We had Kevin Hollenrake likening the Reform badge to that of the Nazi Party badge as well. Is this acceptable language from Priti Patel? And is that what she truly thinks about Reform voters? Does she need reminding that Reform voters are often the same base as Tories, that a lot of them are ex-Tory voters?
Well, I wouldn't like to put words into Priti's mouth. She was there with that fine journalist on your channel yesterday, taking the questions and answering them. But I think the point that Priti was making was about the fact that there is a big difference between the Conservatives and Reform when it comes to the economy. They, like Labour, are all about nationalising things. They're all about increasing. They're wanting to remove that two-child cap and spend more on benefits. And they entered the last election, pretty much like Labour, with £140 billion of unfunded spending commitments. The Conservative Party, on the other hand, are the party of fiscal responsibility. We're the party that look after the economy, that are determined to pay down. We're not only telling you how we spend things, we're telling you how we afford those things. Kemi's been on, she's outlined £47 billion of savings. She hasn't even said that we're going to spend all that. She said we're going to put 50% of that into paying down the national debt. Under this government, we're seeing no growth. We're seeing inflation virtually double. The only thing growing is the national debt. 21% more people out of work. By the time of the next election, our economy is going to be a hell of a shape. We're going to need to be coming forward. Well, we are putting forward a real plan for how we rescue that economy.
Is that appropriate or acceptable language in this political climate, especially when we're concerned about the safety of MPs?
I think we could. Well, I'll leave. Well, she was on here taking all the questions. She did a fair few hours yesterday with journalists, taking those questions, answering those questions. I think she has a really valid point when it comes to the economy, about the fact that if you want a country, a government, that looks after people who work hard, who do the right thing, rather than splashing away endless sums of money on nationalisation or on benefits, the choice is the Conservative Party, Reform and the Labour Party are determined to nationalise anything that moves, spend yet more of taxpayers' money on benefits. The Conservatives are going to handle your money responsibly and support people who work hard and do the right thing.
Matt Vickers, thanks a lot. Matt's Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party.
There's nothing more important than keeping your money and your identity safe online. And with so many VPN options available, choosing the right one can be pretty daunting. But this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN, is making the choice easier for GB News viewers. ExpressVPN is offering up to 75% off, plus 4 extra months free. That's top-level security from just £2.49 a month, and you're covered by their 30-day money-back guarantee. So just click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code now. Remember, when you're online, you are often sharing personal data, so hackers can steal your information, your passwords, your photos, and your bank details in just seconds. But ExpressVPN encrypts your connection, making it virtually impossible for hackers to access your personal information. So why choose ExpressVPN? Well, it couldn't be easier to use. With just one click, you are protected. And ExpressVPN uses military-grade AES 256 encryption, which is the same standard trusted by the US government to guard their classified information. With their new tiered plans, you can protect up to 14 devices at once and manage passwords securely. Live chat support is available 24/7, and it typically connects you in under a minute with a real person. Click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code to get up to 75% off ExpressVPN, plus 4 months extra for free. Start protecting yourself today with ExpressVPN.
Well, let's get straight into politics, shall we? And speak to Secretary of State for Scotland, Douglas Alexander, this morning. Very good morning to you, Mr. Alexander.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can we start with this decision to block Andy Burnham from the Gorton and Denton by-election, the most popular candidate on offer, certainly the most popular Labour figure in the country? Was this the right decision, or is this the Keir Starmer running scared of a very popular figure and potentially putting his own personal ambition before the best interests of the party?
So as the Labour Party, we're facing critical elections in Scotland, in Wales and across England in just 101 days' time. And yesterday, the officers of the National Executive Committee had to weigh in the balance specific rules in the rule book about whether sitting mayors can stand in a parliamentary by-election. The reality that if Andy was successful in the parliamentary by-election as a Labour candidate, it would cause a by-election in the Manchester mayoralty involving about 20 parliamentary constituencies. And what would be the cost, the energy, the effort and the expense involved in doing that additional campaign when we need to be laser focused on those 101 days on taking the fight to reform, to the Greens, to Clyde Cymru and to the Scottish National Party?
But Douglas, if you knew that and the National Executive knew that, Andy Burnham knew all that. He knew what the restrictions were in the rule book, surely.
Yes, he would have been aware of the rule book, I'm sure of that, but he's perfectly entitled to put himself forward, as surely as the National Executive Committee are perfectly entitled to interpret the rules and to reach their judgment. The fact we have that rule book reflects the fact that our Constitution says by the strength of our common endeavour we achieve more than we can alone. So those rules are devised not for any one individual, but for what collectively is in the interests of the Labour Party, and the judgment that was reached yesterday by those officers reflected their interpretation of those rules.
But you've potentially gifted Gorton and Denton to reform.
Well, listen, I'm unusual in that I've fought two by-elections. I've lost one and I've won one. It's a mug's game predicting what's going to happen in a by-election before it's even started. So you'll forgive me if I simply say, listen, we're not anticipating defeat, we're working hard for victory, and there's not much point in having a post-match analysis even before a ball's been kicked.
But you've worked with Andy Burnham, haven't you, very closely. You served with him in Blair and Brown's governments. You knew and witnessed his work both as an MP and as a minister, so you will know him very, very well. You must be able to admit that it is a loss for the Labour Party and the electorate. He's a popular figure, he's got great expertise, that he's not in Westminster working for the country, as you say, taking that fight to reform.
Well, listen, Andy's a great guy. As you say, he's not only someone who I hugely admire politically, but he's also a friend. We served together not just in the Blair governments, but also in Gordon Brown's cabinet. So you'll hear no criticism of Andy from me. But with respect, that strikes me as a somewhat Westminster-centric view of the world. The fact is, Andy has 2 million constituents. He's doing a hugely important job in the mayoralty in Manchester. And as someone who all my political life has argued for devolution first in Scotland and then across England, I think we need to recognise that that's a hugely vital and important job that Andy's doing exactly where he is.
And surely then you can recognise, Douglas, I mean, you know, by your own admission there, he's a star performer, he's a big turn. Keir Starmer is not, I hate to say. I mean, you talk about what the rest of the country thinks and what outside Westminster is. Burnham could get people looking at their television sets and reading their newspapers. He's got a certain presence and whatever it is. And I've got to say, you know, not just speaking personally, but speaking from what other people are saying, they don't think Starmer has it. So you're going to face another challenge, are you not?
OK, so Eamonn, listen, as I say, Andy is a star player and a hugely talented politician. But it's worth remembering there's only 2 politicians alive who have ever delivered a majority Labour government. Keir Starmer is one of them, and if there is one attribute of Keir Starmer's history and career, it is that he has been consistently underestimated. So the fact is, I get and I understand the fact that people are frustrated, they're angry, they want change to come more quickly. That's naturally going to affect your numbers, whether as a government or as a Prime Minister. But we therefore faced a choice yesterday, the National Executive Committee did, as to whether we would spend the next 101 days, if you like, having a version of this conversation about who's up, who's down, who's good, who's bad, or we could focus laser-like on governing in the interests of what the public put us here to do in July 2024 and making sure that we're advancing and supporting Labour candidates in these critical elections right across the country.
Could say, though, that that was a loveless landslide, couldn't you? That reflected more the Tory weakness than it did Labour's strength. But anyway, let's talk about major policing overhaul that's going to be set out today by the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. Loads of stuff in here. Are you confident that this is going to solve the country's crime epidemic, or is this just a PR rebrand, if you like, to disguise your poor record on crime?
I think this is a necessary and overdue reform that strikes the right balance between, on one hand, building our national capabilities in terms of law enforcement in the face of threats like cybercrime, which is only growing not just here but internationally, and on the other hand, recognising the strong desire across England for neighbourhood policing, the speed at which a 999 call is answered, the speed at which you get a response when you call that number. So, if you like, finding that balance between effective neighbourhood policing and effective national capability is exactly what Shabana will be announcing today.
Thank you very much indeed for your time today, Douglas. Appreciate it. Douglas Alexander is the Secretary of State for Scotland. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, joining us now is GB News Chief Political Correspondent Catherine Forster, who's listening across to all of that. What do you think of what Mr Alexander had to say?
Well, I was just remembering that before the election, one of Labour's pledges was that they would stop the chaos, all of the infighting that we saw. And here we go again. Now, in fairness to the Prime Minister, there was no good option, because if they let Andy Burnham back in, if he wins the seat, everybody knows that he really would like the Prime Minister's job. So trouble there, but trouble this way too, because people will think that the Prime Minister is running scared. They will think, certainly Andy Burnham's allies think that the whole thing was a stitch-up, because the people that made the decision are, the PM was one of them, but basically backers of the Prime Minister. And the bottom line is that the Prime Minister, his approval ratings are absolutely on the floor. And it may be that he's keeping Andy Burnham out for now, though that could still change. But there may be somebody else who comes after him in the coming months, potentially after the May local elections, which will probably be dire. Wes Streeting, he would deny it, the Health Secretary, but everybody knows he would like to be Prime Minister. So I don't think any end to the chaos, and the government would say we want to be talking about policing reforms. They want to be talking about things, and yet day after day after day, whether it's Andy Burnham or whether it is Donald Trump, they are not being able to get a hearing for the things they want to talk about.
Well,